course. Today we're going to look at the shift from modernism to postmodernism, particularly as it's described by the theorists Frederic Jameson and David Harvey. The political theorist Frederic Jameson describes postmodernism as a cultural form associated with a new stage in the modes of production. Marx had described the stages of modes of production as moving from tribal to ancient communal to feudal to capitalism and then to communism. But Jameson says that this last stage did not take place. Rather, capitalism was divided into several stages. Capitalism was divided into two stages of market capitalism or industrialism and monopoly capitalism or imperialism. Jameson theorizes a new stage that he calls late capitalism. This stage consists of a consumer society, high-tech society, and globalization. Jameson argues that these modes of production are accompanied by certain cultural dominants. In the case of market capitalism and monopoly capitalism, the cultural dominant is modernism, and in the case of late capitalism, the cultural dominant is what he calls postmodernism. The cultural dominant could be something like the ideological state apparatuses of Althusser. So what does Jameson mean by this term cultural dominant? Well, in the context of modernism, he was talking about abstract expressionism within painting. He was talking about existentialism within philosophy. In architecture, it referred to the traditional city, high-rise housing, such as seen in the designs of architects like Le Corbusier. And he was also talking about modernist schools of literature, film, and poetry. By contrast, the cultural dominant of postmodernism is characterized by made-for-TV movies, Reader's Digest, B-grade Hollywood films, and science fiction and romance novels. Frederic Jameson describes the differences between the modernist and the postmodernist cultural dominant by using two pieces of artwork. He uses Vincent van Gogh's work, Peasant Shoes, as an example of the modernist cultural dominant, and he uses Andy Warhol's Diamond Dust Shoes as an example of postmodernism. What are the differences between these two different artworks? Van Gogh's artwork, Peasant Shoes, is a representative of the modernist cultural dominant that Jameson describes. You can see the world of agricultural misery, the stark rural poverty, and the peasant toil represented in this artwork. The shoes evoke the loneliness and hard work of peasant labor. Shoes themselves are the instruments of labor. By contrast, Warhol's artwork, Diamond Dust Shoes, represents the cultural dominant of postmodernism. We can see a random collection of objects that are severed from context. They represent commodification and consumption. There's a lack of depth, a certain superficiality. There is a lack of authenticity, as we can see per Benjamin, as we talked about earlier. This is a print and not an actual oil painting like Peasant Shoes. And finally, there is no emotion or sense of reality. So how can we understand postmodernism, this cultural dominant, as a social theory? Postmodern social theory has had a tremendous influence on the development of social theory and has spurred many further theories that we will continue to look at in the course of our study. The geographer David Harvey gives a description of the main tenets of postmodern social theory. 1. There is no single reality. Radically different realities may coexist. 2. There is an opposition to all forms of meta-narratives as totalizing, such as Marxism and modernism. 3. There is a total acceptance of ephemerality, fragmentation, and discontinuity. Fourth, there is a fragmentation of the subject. There is no authentic or true self that exists. And number 5, there is no such thing as human progress, no sense of historical continuity. The influence of social theory within postmodernism has opened up both opportunities but also limitations. Postmodernism opens a path for challenging all kinds of power discourse, race, gender, and sexuality, not just class. It promotes the idea that all groups have the right to speak for themselves, in their own voice. It offers a pluralistic stance. At the same time, it abandons the possibility for historical continuity and memory. In rejecting a broader theory of capitalism, it fails to come up with a path whereby capitalist exploitation could be challenged.